everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we're really excited today. This has become kind of a yearly tradition as they've been doing a Hanukkah themed film every year for Countdown to Christmas. So every year we have been talking about the films and had Stacey Agdern on. And thank you so much for coming back.
Of course, I really, really enjoy having these discussions with you, Rachel. And just being on, and I love the podcast. So,
well, thank you. And this is a good chance to get caught up with you. You have been busy writing.
Yes. So my next, it's interesting to talk about my new stuff and last night's and Hanukkah on Rye because so my next book is called The B'nai Mitzvah Mistake. It comes out June 1st, 2023. And then right after that is a book called The Dating Contract, which the release date is uncertain, but it's two in the series. It's a 4-book series about 2 sets of cousins and a wedding and sort of the cycle of a wedding and what happens. But one of the interesting things, which I will talk about later, is one of the interesting subplots of The B'nai Mitzvah Mistake, which ties into the conversation that we'll be having later about Hanukkah on Rye. But yeah, so new series, like 2
that would be amazing. 4 books, huh?
Yeah, I'm excited. Name It's the Mistake is about 2 people in their 30s who, for various reasons, did not have a chance to have their bar bat mitzvahs as kids. So as adults, they decide that this is time to do it. Cute. They both take a class and they are stuck sharing a date.
Oh,
and they have a bit of a history. He is the retired hockey player who, at the beginning of his career, derailed her younger sister's career as a sports agent.
Oh,
so there are issues and questions.
And what's it called again?
It's called The B'nai Mitzvah Mistake.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Yeah, and so you have 2 other holiday films. You have Love and Latkes.
Yep.
And then you have Miracles and Menorahs.
Yes. Miracles and Menorahs came out in 2020. And Love and Latkes came out in 2021. And hopefully, as things go, book 3 in this new series is also a Hanukkah book. With a character from Love and Latkes getting his own story.
Oh, that'll be fun. That'll be good. I love that in romance novels when the spin-offs.
Yes, like that's fun. Like my favorite thing is like how people like that's how series work.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, in romance novels, you introduce a group of friends and they all get their stories and you get to follow them all falling in love, or whether it's friends, whether it's cousins, whether it's sisters, whether it's people on a hockey team or a baseball team, you see them all and it's kind of amazing.
And I wish they did that more in these movies. You see it like, I guess, a little bit in the evergreen movies, but even those movies, they usually brought in somebody new. They didn't spin off except for the last one. And so I would love that in more of these movies. Like if you're going to do a series, instead of telling us what happens with the main couple do a spinoff and then have the other couple come in for a couple scenes. Like that's, to me, it would be really fun.
Yeah, no, it is really cool. I like the wedding veil trilogies for that reason, because that's what they do, right? They have the 3 friends and their stories, or oh gosh.
It'll be interesting to see what they do coming up with the wedding veil, because now they have them all 3 women coupled up. So what do they do next? Are they going to do kind of the spin-off model, or I'd be curious to see what they do. Yeah. So we've talked about this pretty much every time we've covered one of these Hanukkah movies, but you always say that Hanukkah is a holiday of identity. And so why don't you, just for people who maybe haven't heard that before, why don't you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
So when we talk about holidays that have, I was thinking about this last night, holidays that have religious impact in the context of the Jewish calendar, Hanukkah is not really high up there. You have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are the big 2 central, like religious, like holiest holidays of the year, and then followed by Passover and Purim, and you've got a whole bunch of other holidays that sort of somehow fit in there. But Hanukkah is towards the bottom. But because of its location in the calendar and because of what it celebrates, it has become a holiday where American Jews can stand up and say, I celebrate Hanukkah, AKA I am Jewish. It's become a holiday of cultural pride in being proud of your culture, because really that's what it celebrates. Aside from the miracle of the oil, it also celebrates, fighting for freedom, fighting for the ability to celebrate, fighting for the ability to be Jewish. And for it. So.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, that, and I think it is what is maybe trickier about making a movie around it, is kind of capturing that sense of identity without sort of diving too much into some of the religious things. Because if you think about it with Christmas, like, we really hardly ever talk about the actual religious meaning behind the holiday. As far as, you almost never see a nativity, maybe on some of the movies and mysteries occasionally, like there was sort of one for a joke with the Undercover Holiday and Three Wise Men, but it's pretty rare that you get like sort of scenes where you're talking about Christ and the birth and Bethlehem. You just don't see that much. Maybe on something like Kirk Franklin or The Gift of Peace, where they're trying to be a little more religious, but it's just become pretty secularized. So it makes it easier to make a movie about it.
But it's also, as I said, like because within the context of the faith, it's the holiday where everybody comes home. Because it does have that internal impact. So it's easier to say we're going to make a Christmas movie because it's like, that sort of underlying aspect of it being that's one of those two big religious holidays. So like it's easier to say like we're going to make a Christmas movie because we know like internally like everybody is celebrating, everybody goes to church or whatever, like gets together and like celebrates, in that sort of sense. Whereas with Hanukkah, I feel the much more successful movies focus not on the holiday itself but an event surrounding it.
Yeah, I was always going to say that really, they do have, we'll talk more about the outdoor, menorah celebration, but they try to work it in. But really, you could have this movie set at any time of the year. I think with them, with the matchmakers and the writing the letters and the buying the deli, all that stuff could be done any time of the year.
Yeah, but I think like it has much more of an impact. Like tying all of the things together has much more of an impact because it is Hanukkah. Because if for example, if you tied it into a Passover concept, like the whole concept would have to be different because of what Passover means and celebrates.
Yeah, that's
like
interesting.
It's kind of like or if you moved it to say like a Purim holiday, again, like the whole story would have to change because of how the holiday is observed or like what happens around it. So like having it happen during December, during Hanukkah, allows it to focus on not only the sort of holiday itself, but also the specific culinary questions, which is another thing I was really excited to have really excited to see.
Yeah. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast.
Calling all Pride and Prejudice fans, Lizzie Shane, the award-winning author of the Pine Hollow series, has a brand new small town romance on the shelves. And this time it has a Jane Austen twist.
In Pride and Puppies, a Jane Austen fan struggling to find her modern-day Mr. Darcy decides to swear off men and adopt an adorable puppy, only to find herself catching feelings for her sweet, not at all Darcy-esque neighbor.
Lizzie Shane's Pine Hollow series has been called an irresistible blend of heart, humor, and a whole lot of puppy love.
Don't miss Pride and Puppies, available now wherever books are sold.
To learn more, visit www.lizzieshane.com or use our affiliate link in the description.
That's lizzieshane.com. Let's talk about it.
All right.
And it's Hanukkah on Rye, and this is on the 19th, and it stars Jeremy Jordan, Yael Groblas, and the director Peter DeLuise and writer Julie Sherman-Wolfe. And it's a matchmaker connects Molly and Jacob, but their new romance is put to the test when they realize that they are competing deli owners. Will a Hanukkah miracle keep them together? So I guess we should say, just overall, what did you think of the movie?
I thought it was fantastic. Like, you know, if we're giving it stars this early, I would say 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this might be Julie Sherman-Wolfe's best script that she's ever written, which is saying a lot because I really admire her and love her.
Yes.
And this might be my favorite movie of the whole season. It's definitely, which is like, I there's a side of me that's like, I never thought that a Hanukkah would be my favorite of Countdown to Christmas, but it was, I thought, so well done, this movie.
It was fantastic.
It was so good. And one of the things that straight off that I thought was so great about this movie was that she didn't feel the need to explain Hanukkah and the customs and the things to the audience. One of the things, as you probably heard yesterday, listening back to the episode, I didn't like about last year's Hanukkah movie, which most people seem to like a lot more than I did. But one thing I didn't like is they had this character at the Hanukkah celebrations that was only there so that they could explain every single thing that was happening to this non-Jewish character. And I just felt like not only did that just sort of bog the movie down, but I felt like it was kind of insulting to the audience that, like, I mean, I know that we might not know the intricacies of like the prayers and, you know, some of the more specific stuff, but I think most people know like what a menorah is. I mean, I don't know. I just felt like this was annoying. And if you don't know what something is in a movie, like you still can appreciate kind of, even if I don't understand completely what something means, I can appreciate that the character does and that the character appreciates it and it's important to the character. And then I just go on and continue to watch what's happening to the character. I don't need to have the Wikipedia character in there to explain everything to me. That's just, I don't know. I don't like that at all. And I was so happy in this movie that they didn't do that at all. Like they had some exposition in the sense of like what had happened to the grandmothers and, you know, some of the other things about the community, but there was no like, here's what a menorah is and here's what the 8, you know, nights mean.
Also I think this movie in a lot of ways marked sort of the official, like, we are now going to have capital H Hanukkah movies from now on. Like, you know, we talked, you know, one of the things, like it's been this progression, you know, from Double Holiday Date in 2019, 2019's movie Love Lights Hanukkah, last year the 8 Gifts of Hanukkah. Like it's been a progression, and we've slowly gotten to the point where they no longer have to teach the audience about Hanukkah anymore, because it's become a staple, you know, within, and now we're here, and I can't wait to see what's next. But like this is that sort of like time where they're, you know, where they've taken the journey, where they've arrived and they're not going back. I was not able to see the viewing when it aired, so I don't know in terms of the colors and the marks and the sort of like headlining discussions about it. But one of the things I also loved, like whether they like use the countdown to Christmas, whether they like use different colors in like you know, the backgrounds and stuff, I didn't really get to see that, so I can't really talk about that. But what I did love as well this year was also the music, like how the music integrated. I think there was like Sevivan and a couple of the other traditional songs that were tied into the music that was composed for the movie.
And that was something we also talked about last year. I mean, I have no idea if anybody from Hallmark listens to the podcast. I think Julie does, so maybe you know, that helped. But yeah, we talked about last year that they literally had like a whole scene of dancing with, I forget the song, but it's like, it wasn't a Hanukkah song at all.
Some random 90s song, and it was just when like there were so many, when there were and still are so many other Hanukkah songs, but I loved the fact that Lisa Loeb, they pulled in Lisa Loeb. She played her Hanukkah song Light, which I loved. So
yeah, it was really good. That was really cool that they did that, and it just made the whole experience so immersive, and I loved the whole cast. I thought it was amazing, and the story was just so well executed. Like, I don't know how anybody walks away from this movie not being like, that was a well done movie for what they were trying to do, like
it was perfect. It was like,
yeah, I mean, it was
this, please, like more of this kind of like story. And one of the things I really, really loved about it was how they tied the conversation into the actual problem of Jewish delis staying in business in New York. I want to say it was in 2021, Kevin Pang, through the America's Test Kitchen podcast, had a podcast about this exact question. And I thought it was interesting because that podcast came out like a month after Love and Latke's. So like that was a thing that was on my mind. And like the sort of the changes that are happening on the Lower East Side, and sort of like the loss of history and like what's going on and like the tenement museum, like all of that conversation, which actually, side note, goes into the name. But it was interesting to see that in a Hallmark movie. I did not expect that like 201 or 301 level conversation. Like that was kind of amazing. Like I was, aside from everything else, I was like, this is next level.
Yeah, I did not know that was like a thing, that was a problem that was happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, I mean, just restaurants in general. I mean, certainly the pandemic really just hurt that industry the most. And there was actually an article just here about Utah restaurants a couple of weeks ago that's saying that actually this last year has been harder for them in many ways than even the height of the pandemic year, than 2020. And going into just that, it's been really hard for them to, the people still aren't, I guess, eating out as much, and that, it's one thing to kind of keep yourselves open when you're closed and you don't have any expenses, right?
Yeah.
But then it's another thing. I mean, aside from rent, you do have expenses, but less expensive. But to keep things going in this, where like everything's gotten so expensive, food costs have gotten so expensive, and this year. So anyway, it's a thing that's happening, but I didn't know, I guess, that it was particularly a problem with the Jewish deli scene in New York. It's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. So it starts out with her trying to make the egg cream for her grandma, and they're like, no, thank you. And so she's struggling with that. And I just loved all the casting. Both families I thought were so good.
His grandmother, I've seen her in a bunch of different movies, and I love to see her in this one. And as a little side note, she reminded me of my own grandmother on my dad's side, my grandmother, Ruth Krupp. So seeing her and like her particular sort of movement like reminded me very much of her.
Yeah, Paula Shaw. She is so good in these movies. She did a great. She was really good. And all of the families just felt like authentic. I would believe that these were our families.
I can, yes, very, very, very much so. And then like they were correct, and like you can think about this and think about that movie that I refuse to discuss in detail from like 20 whatever the hell, and like see the changes in like the nuance of casting, the nuance of acting, the nuance of the story. Like you literally look at these characters, like the older characters especially, and they walk that line between that authenticity and a stereotype, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Like I recognize my family in these.
Well, and we've seen so many examples of this. It actually goes way back to a play called La Perfumerie, I think is what it's called. But then it was Shop Around the Corner and Good Old Summertime. And then You've Got Mail. And we've seen it many times. She Loves Me on Broadway. It's a story that just works. This idea that two people are communicating with each other, falling in love, but they don't like each other, or they know each other on the outside. So there's this dual relationship. It just works. It's a great story.
It's a great plot device. It's a proven trope. It's a proven plot device. And when you got this great cast to pull it off, like Jeremy Jordan walks that line between aw shucks and like this, you can see the businessman in him, like diving out there. And he's the aw shucks adorable cutie, and at the same time he is also like the shark. So it's really, really interesting to see all of these aspects of him and like how he's diving in on that side. And like Yael Grobloss is awesome. Like she's very much like, you could see the New York, like even though like obviously like it's not, does not, you know, the story takes place in New York, even though it's not New York sort of feel to it, if that makes any sense. Like it's the location was not, that's right. But like you could see the personality that she pulls off, and it's wonderful in her character, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I love both of them so much. I had never seen her before. I guess she was on Jane the Virgin. She was on that show. I haven't watched that show, but I just loved her so much. I thought she was great.
Great job.
And he was great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his, so I knew, that I would love him. But I thought that they had really great chemistry, and I kind of liked the fact that they didn't really have. It wasn't like Jimmy Stewart and it wasn't like in Shop Around the Corner or You've Got Mail, in the sense that like in this case they liked each other outside of the writing. She was actually concerned because she's like, I'm in love with this guy, I'm getting in love with him, and yet I'm writing this other guy that I'm also, in falling for. So it was a little bit different dynamic than you typically see in the story.
Yeah. And the other thing that I loved about it was that he was trying to save her business in a way that none of the other incarnations of the story you've seen. And I really liked that aspect of it, that he was like, as he was in New York for longer and longer, he realized like what her family did and what her family's heritage was,
And he wasn't really ever a bad man of business.
No.
That had to kind of come around and be reformed. And I think that in You've Got Mail's case, because it's Tom Hanks, it comes a long way in us saying, okay, we understand why he had to do what he did and why he can kind of come around, and he has his what is it? I forget what he calls it, but when he has his mission to win her back over. I forget what he calls it, but anyway, until you kind of buy it, I think because it's Tom Hanks and he's so likable. But in this case, from like he is actively like stressing about how he's going to talk to his family and convince them that they shouldn't do this. So I thought that was great. I agree. I thought he was a really great character, really well written, really well acted. He was so charming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would have wanted him to have sung, Little Mouths or something like that, somewhere, maybe like a little, I have a little dreidel, maybe,
Is that his family is in California, right? Yeah, his family's in California. And I think actually they didn't have a deli. I think what they have is a diner. Because you go to diners, they usually have these huge menus with lots of different options and lots of different cuisines. And their philosophy was, we want everyone to feel at home, so there'll be something for everyone. And so they have fajitas and fettuccine and all this stuff, and they kind of is that their menu is an American melting pot with a side of pickles.
Yep.
But I don't know. Do you agree?
I think it was an interesting take on things. I mean, like I've seen like, I don't know if they went, I don't know if the LA restaurant is kosher or not. I don't even know.
Yeah, they didn't really talk about that.
But like, you know, whether, I mean, I don't think it is, because they have the double menu with like the fajitas and like the pastrami in the same place. So probably, so definitely not kosher. I take that back. But like, because fajitas, cheese, etc. Anyway.
Yeah.
But like, you know, a restaurant, sure. A diner, I don't know. I mean, I think I think for me the term,
but you know what I mean? Like in New Jersey, you go to those diners and they have like huge menus.
Right. There's like a very specific thing that's tied into diners. And I think their sort of intent is to create a deli kind of restaurant thing, if that makes any sense. Like diner is something else entirely. Like there's if you think about Katz's Deli, or you think about like, you know, the sort of deli restaurants, I think that's what they were going for in California. Like, you know, diner, I feel like it's a cozier thing. Like, you know, you think about like the sort of like comfy, like the benches with like the cushions, you know, there's a particular set of lighting when you go into a diner. There's like this very familiar aesthetic and feel to it. And it's like every random place you walk into, whether it's like, you know, upstate New York or like, you know, in Arizona, like when someone is creating a diner, that's where that feel is. I think they tried to, his family tried to sort of create this, the restaurant deli part of it, if that makes sense at all.
Because I think it would be very difficult, because nobody can be great at every single different kind of cooking. And so I think that this would be a hard, was it Zimmer's? Is that what it's called?
Zimmer's.
Yeah. Zimmer's would be a hard concept to pull off, I think, because they're just trying to do so much.
I think it really depends. Like if they are as successful as they seem to be out there, I mean, again, like I don't know what the climate is in LA, like, and climate in LA is like in terms of like restaurants and stuff. So I can't really say as much, but like, you know, if you've got your clientele, which is what they seem to have, you know, they seem to have like, whether like all of the things on the menu are fantastic, who knows, you know, because everybody probably has their favorites. And like, you know, I would be going in and ordering poutine, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you have something like Cheesecake Factory is also in that same kind of concept, where they have the huge menu, but they have the through line of sort of cheesecake as being the binding thing, the continuous thing. So I don't know, it's an interesting idea, but that was how they tried to kind of show contrast between these two. You have like, because you needed to have some kind of contrast, because otherwise it would just be like two delis.
Yeah, and like what exactly, and like what new extra thing would like something like Zimmer's be bringing to New York? Like what would they be trying to do there?
Yeah, so they are going to try to open a new restaurant in the east side of New York.
Yep.
And so he goes over there. He has a rental, short-term rental. It turns out it's in her building, and then they have a meet cute at the mailbox.
Funny aside, my brother lives in Brooklyn. His front door hates me. Like the front door to his apartment hates me.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It's got this like metal sort of outer covering, and like there's a very particular way of opening the door. It does not like me. I have never like successfully opened it semi-regularly, like by myself. And like I was watching my nephew at one point, and the poor little guy was like, "Are you okay? You can do it." And I was like, "Oh my God." when he was younger, and I was just like, "Oh my God."
That's
but
funny.
Watching that sequence with the mailboxes, that's what that reminded me of. And
yeah, it was funny. And you have this like classic New York lady who's just very, very sharp with him about it.
Oh God,
and,
like, the neighbor, you know, the resident, you know, true crime obsessed conspiracy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's Only Murders in the Building.
Yes, that's what I said. I was like, I bet Julie's been watching Only Murders in the Building. But they have the meet cute at the mailbox, and it was so funny. She's like, "You're not my type. My type is men who can't who my type is men who can open a mailbox without help."
Yeah.
I mean, that was so cute and funny, and they just had great chemistry between the two of them.
They were wonderful.
Yeah. And I died laughing when her mom gives her the swan.
Yeah.
And I was already laughing at that. That was really funny to me.
What killed me was when she opened the fridge and all the swans, and I'm just dying.
Yes. So then it added even more. I was already laughing. And then she opens her fridge and this whole swans.
I was like, this is so amazing.
It was so funny. I loved it. It reminded me of there's a great Ray Romano comedy album, really funny, where he talks about there's not much difference between Jewish and Italian mothers, and they're the food mothers, and he's like, they'll chase you down with a swan.
Yeah.
He's like, he says that that everything in his mother's house is waiting for a visit from the Pope or Chatsy. It's like plates that have never been used. Yeah. Really funny. Yeah. So I thought that was a great joke. But
like my family, like leftovers get like fought over. Like when my brother visit, like my brother and my sister-in-law visit, my brother's like, "Ma," and it's like my mom's like,
yeah. I mean, I have to say I like it when my mom and I go home from like Thanksgiving. I was at my parents and they sent me home with a whole bunch of leftovers. It's great. Oh, yeah. But so both of the Bobas talk to them about this matchmaker who has 100% track record.
Yep.
And so they agree to do it to kind of just placate the parents. Yeah. And this matchmaker, the whole thing is that you're not allowed to use the internet and you have to write letters to each other. They even have messengers that are there every day to get the letters. And I really liked the doorman. He was amazing. Very fun.
Very traditional, very typical, like very like within New York doorman, which is kind of, I love it.
So eventually he's just to the messenger guy. He's like, I can do this. I can handle it.
Yeah.
And so he gets kind of invested in being like, are you sure about that? Read the letter or whatever.
I loved it. I loved how he slowly like became Jacob's confidant in the situation. Like, the way that it worked, it was really, really interesting. It was like, in terms of like the cast, it was like their families and the doorman.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. That was the link.
And like, usually there's like a friend or two, you know, this time, not so much. And it's interesting how that got organized.
It's true. Yeah. There was no like Dave Chappelle character in You've Got Mail, you know, that's his like sidekick. There wasn't really anything like it was the doorman. You're right.
There's no best friend. There's no nothing. Like there's And so literally they had to confide in each other.
And I just loved the whole letter writing part of it was so good. She starts out shalom.
I'm like,
that's so funny.
I'm like, that's kind of amazing.
And he says this writing only thing has its perks because it forces you to kind of take your time and think about every word that you're writing, which you don't have in text and things like that. And so I thought that was just so endearing, and it just helped you get to know the characters so well.
Yeah, it did. And like I was watching him write his first letter, like trying to figure out what the heck he was going to say. And like I watched like the papers accumulate. I'm like, that's writer's block if I've ever seen it. You know,
well, and they had such a cute second meetup when she's passing out the flyers. And he's like, oh, Gilbert's a little dated.
I'm just like,
and then he apologizes, and And it was great. It was just great banter.
Like once, like again, like, it showed him as that he was the fish out of water character.
Yes.
He was the fish out of water character who didn't really understand very much about the history, not only of the restaurant, but of the area.
Right.
And like they used his character in that way, which I thought was genius.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Even understand his own family, not by his own fault.
No, it was his grandmother. It was his bubby who was like keeping everything secret, which does happen. Like it was a genuine contrast between like how her family, everybody knows everything and everybody's up in everybody else's business and they all live together and it's wonderful. And then his family, all you see is like them in the restaurant. You don't see them at home. You see them like working together, but like how do they, do they live together? What are they like? There's that implied separation between them as opposed to her family.
Yeah.
Like they're close, but they're not all up on each other, for lack of a better explanation.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That his family seemed a little bit more separated from him, a little bit, like still close, but not, I agree. Not the same as her family.
Yeah.
So they have this outdoor menorah lighting. And our friend Hannah from One Kiss Means Forever, she said she's Jewish. She says she's never heard of an outdoor menorah lighting. And Julie responded back and said, like with an example, she had a thing.
So quite a number of years ago, actually, I think about Jennifer Grayson's Holidays in Manhattan. I mean, I researched this beforehand, but like it was the interfaith book that sort of heralded and opened the door for miracles and menorahs.
Yeah.
And they talk about the Central Park menorah lighting. The Chabad in Central Park, and there's also one in Borough Park, like the world's biggest menorah where they come up in cherry pickers.
That's the one that Julie shared.
Yep. And then last year in Edmonton too, they did that. Zach Hyman, who plays for the Edmonton Oilers, was involved in that menorah lighting. Like they do it all over the place. Like it's, maybe like 10-15 years ago it wasn't a thing, but it's becoming more of one. And I think one of the reasons why, like, I think it was 2020, like about the light in the window, like talking about like one of the biggest things about Hanukkah isn't just like, let's light the candles and bless them. No. It's literally, let's display this menorah for everybody to see. So that I think is where it comes from. Like this idea of let's display this menorah.
Well, and I think that you really need that kind of community event for these movies. It's just a part of these movies. And so even if it doesn't happen that often or it needs to happen more or whatever, like it worked for the story.
It does. And also like one of the biggest things, like that's like how you celebrate the holiday, like lighting, blessing the candles, every night. That's literally like the central basis of celebration of the holiday. Like I love what they did last year with the David Dig with brain's not working today. God, I'm all over the place. I'm thinking Puppy for Hanukkah. No, in fact, version of Mao Zora that was in last year's movie was beautiful. And like that was like part of the event. And like I will never stop sobbing at the fact that they're saying the blessings on in a movie.
Well, that's one I thought really worked in Double Holiday with Palaha, that the way that they had him learning the prayers each night and showing and the family kind of welcoming him into their celebrations. I thought that was really great. And so I think that's a really nice way to kind of use the tropes that we know and love from these movies, but apply it to Hanukkah.
Like
it works.
I mean, like, you know, the sort of central idea of like the perfect tree, like the perfect holiday, like menorahs don't grow in a forest. You can't just go, so you've got to find a menorah. You know?
Yeah, and they even had like little scenes where they talked about, it's getting, the wax is getting built up. And so you got to put it in the freezer. It's like, that's clever. That
like,
fun.
and it was interesting because like you intrinsically know about this stuff, but like this year more than any otherwise is your different all others. Anyway, passive reject aside. I've seen like 5 different videos before this movie about like, this is how you clean out your menorah, like whether it's on TikTok or Instagram. It was kind of amazing. Like, this is genius. And then I see it in the movie and I'm like, okay, now we're cooking. I'm like, all right,
they have this Hanukkah song contest at the Gilberts, and it was great. They were like, nothing rhymes with latkes.
I loved it. I was like, this is fantastic. I loved like the different sort of ways that people are like, you know, Hanukkah. Like I thought of a friend of mine who's like sort of theme in life is spelling Hanukkah the most ridiculous ways. Like she recently posted on Twitter, like, okay, this is my most recent creation. It's hilarious. But like, you know, it captured like all of these like moments that everybody has, you know, within the context of the holiday. Like, you know, how do you spell it? It's a Hebrew, you know, and the answer, of course, is that it's a Hebrew word, you know, however transliteration, as long as you put it, you know, as long as it remotely looks correct, that's great. You know.
I just do it the way that Hallmark is doing it.
I have a tendency to switch depending on what context. Like, if it sounds right in a certain way, if it looks right, if it's alliteration, great. You know, H or C, it depends. But I'm it
can be tricky.
Flexible. Latke topping flexible, I am not. But like Hanukkah transliteration spelling, I am very flexible.
So then Lisa Loeb comes on. It was really funny. The song, it was like Hanukkah, Hanukkah, Hanukkah. Like,
it was great. I was like, oh my god. But that was what I was talking about with the different spelling. I was like inside or outside joke, and I was like, I thought of my friend who, as I said, I thought of my friend when I was like watching that. I'm like, she would kick me out of it. She didn't mention it when she saw the movie, but she was like, so I definitely.
And so she gets up and she sings her song, and it's a great song.
It is.
And she wasn't in the movie quite as much as I thought she was going to be. I thought she'd have like a more like actual part, but it, you know, she's good. It's a good song. And like I said, much better than last year where they were just doing weird songs.
And maybe, as I said, maybe they heard us. Like maybe they were like, we're gonna like get an actual like really good like an actual like beneficial like real song, you know, to put in here, which I loved. As I said, I think like everything about this movie cements the fact that Hanukkah is here to stay, and that like when they were advertising the movie, they were like, and here, you know, and Lindsay Sterling, who I love, and Lisa Loeb, and I was like, what? Wait, what? You know, roll back a little bit. And I was like, oh. And I was in Virginia like earlier, like sort of in the middle, late November, and she mentioned it on her was it Sirius XM show, I think is what it is.
Which one? Lisa
Loeb has a show on Sirius, I think.
Okay.
And she was like, and I'm doing this movie and it's going to be great. I'm like, oh my God, like, more of this, please.
It was great. It was really fun. And of course she wins. And then he's there at their restaurant. And I was kind of glad they didn't make like a bigger deal of, I thought it was going to all be this big thing of like, oh, he's, you know, tasting all their food and he's from the competition or whatever. But you know, she was a little bit irritated, but it, you know, it didn't go on too long. And she says real delis don't serve fajitas and fettuccine Alfredo. He says, she says, I should have known all that charm of yours was just a bunch of, and he says, oh, you think I'm charming?
I was like,
don't change the subject.
Yes. I was like, that is amazing.
That was so good. Well done, Julie, there. And, then, so that was kind of that. They realize kind of who they are and everything and what he's doing. And so you get this kind of enemies to lovers a little bit kind of dynamic, but not really. I mean, they were pretty much into each other from very early on.
Yes.
Which surprised me, actually, like how pretty early on she's like, oh, he's cute. I like him. He's good.
But I think that's more realistic,
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like when you're dealing with a rival, especially when you're dealing with the confines of space and time of a Hallmark movie, right?
Yeah.
It's more realistic, especially if he's hot. She's going to notice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She's totally going to notice he's hot.
But I feel like most of these movies don't do that, though. They carry it on, the enemies to lovers, too long.
But
this is just like the very beginning, but pretty much early on, she's like, oh, I like it.
But there's also like, there's so much else that is in this movie. Like, you've got multiple tropes playing along. You've got so many different things that like have to be dealt with and resolved. It's a much layered movie. Yeah. So like, if you spend too much time on one trope, you're like, okay, so how does this one resolve? Which is actually something that I have an issue with. We will talk about when we get to that point.
And I loved the whole conversation when he quotes Ben Franklin and says, when you finish changing, you're finished.
Yeah.
And then she says, without our traditions, our life would be as shaky as a fiddler on the roof. And he's never seen Fiddler on the Roof, which seems crazy. And she says, are you even Jewish?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Like, I thought it was hilarious, but also like, so like, this sort of traditional, and this is one of the great things about this movie. I was thinking about this, like, two Jews, three opinions, right? Like,
yeah.
And one of my favorite like older books that was formative to me in my writing is a book by Deirdre Martin called Chasing Stanley. And my buddy Lori, who lives in LA, and other people who I've talked to like have like said that this, her family is stereotypical, like this is not good. But like at the same time, for me, it was formative because I was like, that's my family now. That, like that opened the door to me being able to write hockey romance. And I think
well, stereotypes exist for a reason. Right. Because they're usually like heightened examples of what we see a lot.
But my point is that yes, for me, I was young, my parents who grew up in the Bronx, like decided that it was important for me. And so literally like I saw Pickle on Broadway. The last, like that last kind of like round of shows that he did on Broadway for Fiddler, I was there. I was in high school.
Yeah.
Not everybody had, like, other people connect their Jewishness differently. Like some people like, Fiddler on the Roof is like a central part of certain Jewish cultures, but not all of them. And I love the way that like they were showing those differences between them, also using him as a fish out of water. But at the same time, like not everybody's formative Jewish experiences are the same.
Yeah, that I agree. It was great.
And
so then he says, I think there's room for both of us on this street.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, they didn't really play up like in You've Got Mail or Shop Around the Corner. They're sort of enemies really much. I mean, it was very mild in this. And
I think this was also where they were talking about the Tenement Museum. And I think that they were like, there was so much more, like it's, again, enemies to lovers is important, but if you spend too much time on it, you're going to lose time to talk about other things.
Yeah.
And like, you focus on their hatred and he's not going to listen to her when she's talking about history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like she's like, right over there, my family. And like, this is important. I didn't you don't realize how important this conversation is about where her grandparents stayed when they came to the United States.
Yes.
Later. But nevertheless, it's important for a lot of different reasons, but also like the Lower East Side, is a formative location in so many different ways. You think about Jewish culture, you think about Russian daughters, you think about like New York Jewish culture and like where it started and why. There's a whole bunch of different places. I don't want to go into too much detail, but nevertheless, like this is where this important conversation happens. And I figure, as I said, if they're still focusing on being enemies, they're not going to have this impact, and he's not going to start to listen to her. She's already listening to him in terms of like all of the events that they're having, but like, you know, in conjunction with the menorah lighting every night. But like at the same time, he is now going to start listening to her about history.
I agree. And one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, which was really surprising to me, was when he finds the lucky penny and he says, I believe in God because every time I'm feeling down, I get a little sign.
Yep.
Which usually you don't have outright sort of statements of belief for a character in a Hallmark movie, unless it's a particular like Dayspring, you know, with or a particular religious movie. So that was really refreshing just to have it be this. It wasn't like a big part of his character. It wasn't like, you know, it was just this like little moment where we got to know this little side of him. I thought that was very nice.
It was awesome. I really liked that.
Yeah. And then I died laughing with the latke, the frozen potatoes conversation between her grandparents. And this is I've used them in a pinch.
Yep. I love
says,
like the guy her grandpa's dating. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so funny because like I think about like this time of year and like all the random like hash brown commercials. I'm like, kind of like commercials. Like it would be so easy for like a company like, you know, a sour cream company to be like the applesauce alternative, you know,
right.
You know, one would, like I think about like, well, you know, all these people are like, oh yeah, you know, frozen hash browns. I'm like, well, because with them, what is it?
Yeah, but it was so funny when the grandma says, "You hear that, Stan? It's the sound of your parents rolling their graves."
Yeah,
that was great.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
We have the whole jelly donut making class.
Yes.
And yeah, that is a part of Hanukkah, right?
It is,
jelly donuts. Yeah.
So like the whole thing about Hanukkah is that like foods have to be fried. That's it. Like, you know, Hanukkah foods are fried because of the miracle. That's kind of how it goes. The donuts are sufganiyot, and like if you look at they are fantastic and wonderful. Bread's Bakery in New York does them every year. Like, you know,
I was gonna say, do you have a place that you get?
Modern Bread and Bagel, which is gluten-free, which I love. Also has them this year. Someone I know on Instagram posted like a whole bunch of them that she brought to her office this week, and I was like, I want one now.
Yeah.
I have not gotten one yet, unfortunately, but but there are definitely amazing places.
I know. I was like, ooh, I need to check out my local deli. That's
right?
Those look good.
Yeah, no, and they are filled jelly donuts that are fried.
So they have this little Hanukkah party at the community center or something.
Again,
yeah,
he shows up again.
Yes, and so she has her trick for eating bagels, and it's capers into the cream cheese so they don't roll around, and then the tomato and the onion and the lox and everything. And I'm with her. I think it's a smart strategy.
I'm totally with her. I could totally see that working. It's fantastic. I mean, me, like, you know, I like my white fish spread, you know, first, you know.
Oh, okay.
I would put the white
with
fish
the lox.
Yeah.
Oh,
with or without, depending. But like, yes, I am that person. Like, you know, stick me in the middle of an appetizing situation. I am all over everything. Give it to me, all of it.
Yeah, it was really good. And what do you think of the transitions of the food? I thought that was clever,
That
the
was
way that they had. It was
cute.
fun.
That was really cute.
Yeah.
It's like, it took me a while to realize what was going on, but it was really, really cute. I was like, this is making me hungry. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like,
fun.
oh.
Yes. And so they he's like, is this a Jewish candid camera?
I was like, oh my God. Oh, Ellen.
And so they said the deli was a gathering place, an oasis for them, a place where they could feel at home. He says it's like the oil in the Hanukkah story.
Yeah. Again, like going back to the conversations about history and about the Tenement Museum and about like sort of where Jews gathered and where, you know, and where they went on the Lower East Side. Again, like this plot line, I keep saying this, but like this is a 200, 300 level plot line that I would never have expected in a million years to see in a Hallmark movie, but it is here. And
it was so good.
It was fantastic. Like, again, like the Kevin Pang article, like if you look up the synagogue at Eldridge Street, it will tell you a lot more as well. There are tons of different resources and like it's just amazing.
You should, if you can email me some of those, I'll put them in the description if people want it. I think that would be good. So he watches Fiddler on the Roof. He says, I watched it when you shamed me into it.
Yes.
That's so funny. He says, I don't want to do anything to hurt your business.
Yep.
And he got a lucky penny from her in the cards. So he has 2 lucky pennies now, which is just endearing. And he says, I actually do care about the restaurant, your family and you. And this is when she says that she's been writing letters.
Yes.
And to this guy. And she says, I'm thoughtful and kind, and my mom thinks I'm hilarious. But then she says, I promised my grandma I'd see this through. And so he finds out before her about this, which is always, I think, the case in this story. It seems like the men always find out first. Yeah. So then what they're going to do. But it's really cute. And they decide that she's going to meet him for lunch. And then let's see, sorry. Oh, so then they also have this movie night at the restaurant where they watch Chaplin.
I loved this. I loved this whole sequence about how it went. I loved how, because of course, one of the things about the Lower East Side is that it is not very far from Little Italy and Chinatown. Excuse me. And so like the communities where all of the immigrants came initially and like the heritage of all of the places that still remain, they're close by. And of course, like, she's like, yeah, I've got friends who are going to come. It's wonderful. Like, and there are really cool collaborations. I know Edith's in Brooklyn has something. And I think there have been a couple of different locations that have these collaborations with Chinese places. And it's just really, really cool. To see like that kind of being spoken about in the movie, you know, in the conversation about the movie. So
well, and so he decides maybe she's right, maybe we changed too much, maybe we aren't ready to open here. So he's getting ready, and the conversation between him and the doorman when he says, I can't wait another day to tell her how I feel.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, the doorman's like, she's gonna kill you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And so then she tells her family that Jacob family owns Zimmer's, and they're kind of shocked at first, and then they're like, he is a good man.
Yes.
And so she's going off to meet him. She's got the high heels.
She is like dressed to kill in a way that's like, and I love that because she's like very casual about what she wears. She's not casual a dresser, but she's casual about what she wears. This time it matters.
That's true.
Tell the shoes, the dress, the whole business, the bag, very like.
Yeah, she's stepping up her game.
Yep, she's got her armor on, you know, I think.
Yes, and so then just as he's about to go, his parents show up.
Of course,
and they're upset. Yes.
Yep.
The grandma's annoyed, and she's upset that there's no Hanukkah in the hotel. It's all Christmas trees.
Yep.
And
I love this. I have to say, like, this is only the second time I've heard this mentioned in a Hallmark movie. The first of which was like, oh God, where was it? One of the earlier movies this year, and it was actually like the guy. What was his name? He's been in a couple movies. I think it's Sevier. His last name is Sevier, maybe. And like he was the piano player who got broken up with.
that was the Noel Next Door.
Yes, I think.
Yes. Okay.
And
Corey
like,
Sevier. Yes.
Yes, him. And like I was like the first time I heard this conversation, oh, you know, where's the rest of it? Where's Hanukkah? Where's Diwali? Blah 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 blah. I was like, oh my God, this is wait, what did I just hear? And then this is the second time I heard it. So yeah. I was like, this is fantastic.
It was good. So then she tells this whole story about how her mother actually lived on the East Side, dreamed of having a deli on the East Side, then ended up out in California and they built the deli there. But the reason why she so wants to have the deli on the East Side is to fill this dream of her mother. Yep. And he had never even heard this story before, but he's so moved. He's like, oh no, now we have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Of course, it's Bubby. It's her wish. Like now he realizes that it isn't just eastward expansion.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally like the fruition of his Bubby's dream, and like now he has the context of why it's important, and now he knows why it's important to his family too.
Yes. And so he's like so torn because he is just in love with this woman. What is he going to say? And she's going to be upset. And he does call. And I liked that he called and told that he was running late, but he misses. And then you get this great scene where she is just, what is she going to do? And she writes the goodbye letter to David because she realizes she's in love with Jacob. Yep. And so even though he wasn't there, she writes the letter and it was so good.
It was.
And Jacob's the one. I saw the light. Oh, which of course is perfect for Hanukkah.
Light, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And then the grandma, I think it was one of them, says, "If his stupid deli takes us out of business, he's dead to me."
Yeah, that was her Bubby.
That was funny. Fantastic. So she breaks up with David, and he's like, she wants to be with me. Oh,
yeah.
Wonder of wonder, miracles of miracles.
Yes, the Fiddler.
Yeah. So then he tells her that they signed the deal, and you could see like he was so torn about it, and I felt so bad.
The whole this is what's coming up. This is where they lost me. This is the one quibble I have.
Uh-huh.
And like here's the thing. We know this is the third act breakup. We know we were going to have the third act breakup. I'm not quite sure how to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that there were so many things that they were having issues about, as it were, that there were so many different things. And to me, it wasn't clear enough which one of them was the straw that broke the camel's back.
For her, that she breaks up with him for this time period. And
it's like, which one is the problem? Like, I understand this is over. I know what this is. I'm familiar with this structure, but like,
yeah, it's true because the thing that seems to be the most she gets upset about is just like that he knew for 3 days that she was Beth. And I don't really understand why that is the particular thing that annoyed. Oh, you lied to me kind of a thing. But
like she was reaching for the double deception and it didn't quite land. And I was like,
I do think that's fair. I think that's fair that but I do think also she kind of realizes that she's being stupid. So it didn't bother me that much that she was being stupid.
Yeah. Like later she was like, no, like I understand, like, but that particular moment I was like,
Yeah, I agree. I actually do agree with
that was my one big story quibble, and it hurt because I was like, this has been so amazing up until this point, and now I'm like, oh God, I'm like, please, I'm like, it feels like you're trying to, she was trying to make a French braid and messed up one of the, and messed up one of the, and I'm
fair.
like,
I can see that. Well, so then they tell the bobbies everything, and the bobbies want a refund for the matchmaker. That was hilarious.
That whole scene with the two of them was fantastic.
It was so funny.
I could totally see my grandmother.
And then they challenge everybody to they make a bet about about their who has the best latkes. And it's the battle of the bubbies. And this is applesauce or sour cream. They both say both. Now I know you have strong feelings about this, right?
I do. I grew up in a kosher house. So for me as a kid, and I also like sweet and sour. I also like the sweet and salty mix. I love those combinations. I'm like, give me all the salted caramel in the universe. So clearly I'm going to reach for the sweet thing with the salty. So I very much love the, my latkes dipped in applesauce.
Okay.
I have discovered this year the joy of dairy-free sour cream.
Oh.
I am not going to dip my latkes in it, but I do like that it exists.
Is that like coconut or something?
I'm
like,
not
what do they
exactly
make it out of?
Sure. All I know is that I tried it and it
was good.
And my stomach was happy about it.
Okay.
Without going into detail.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
so they make the latkes, and if you want my friend Samantha Ferrara, she has a blog, and she specializes in Mediterranean and Jewish cooking, and she has so many different ways to make latkes on her website. Really fun.
I also love Maliyeh, who does Farm. I love her stuff. And then Jamie Way on Instagram. I think her handle is chopsticks meets fork. And she shared a daikon sweet potato latke recipe that I almost lost my mind over. And I actually probably lost my mind over. And most of the stuff she does is this like really cool Taiwanese Jewish fusion. And it's fantastic.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And Samantha also has a bunch of the rubelek,
rugla.
Yeah. Make the latkes, and they realize they were exactly the same. And then they pull out the recipes, and they have the same exact recipes. She said Julie Sherman Wolf said on Twitter that Elizabeth Yost, who's one of the producers executives at Hallmark, Elizabeth's grandmother wrote a letter about her journey and the friendship she made, and this was the spark behind the big twist. And so that was how they got this whole idea of the friends on the boat and the letters and everything, and thought that was very sweet.
I love it. Fun fact about me. So in Yiddish, my Hebrew name is Sarah, but when I first learned my name, I learned it as Sora.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's cool.
Like, yeah. So Sora Hinda. And so when I heard that, I was like,
oh, yeah.
Cheers.
I know. It made me tear up. Just just family, them realizing they had this connection. It was so sweet. I loved it.
Like, yeah, no, it was fantastic on so many different levels. Like listening to, like, hearing that story, hearing the friends, hearing like the Ellis coming through Ellis Island together. Like that was like for me, like one of those, as I said, one of those moments. And like, like one of the things I was thinking about in terms of like the names and the language, like I am a generation that watched Yiddish being taken out of the family related picture. My grandparents spoke Yiddish, my parents did not. So like I could see like that sort of aspect of culture being kind of removed in a lot of ways. So like seeing that, like sort of, what's the word, like not like fully stated, but like kind of like, not like linked to, I guess, like sort of
and
like
their
underlying plot line, like that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Again,
really
300, 400 level, like Jewish culture plot lines being explored on Hallmark Channel. I think I literally, if someone had told me this 10 years ago, you would have been able to knock me over with a feather.
Yes. And yes, and they say, I pray to God that she's happy. They were on the same ship. It was so sweet. And then, they, so they're talking together, and they said that think of all the miracles that had to happen to get us together. It was so sweet. And then we feel the same way about each other. And then there's just one last chance for me to be everything you fell for with David.
Yeah, that was sweet. As I said, like they messed up, the third act breakup was
a little messy.
They stuck the landing.
Yeah.
They captured all of these messy like issues and were like, they actually like, because to get that perfectly beautiful ending, like you actually had to address the fact that it was a whole mess.
Yeah. And that she was being kind of stupid. And sometimes that happens. We're sort of petty and stupid. And they said, we're soulmates, we're Bashert. Yes. And I know about Bashert because I'm a big Nanny fan. And there's a really big episode when they almost break up after they've gotten engaged because of various shenanigans. And she at one point gives and then his brother, anyway, so she gives back the ring at one point in the episode, and then she comes back and she says, we're Bashert. It means meant to be. And we're naked without each other, just like my finger. It's a great episode. So I already knew that word because of, and that was one of the great things about The Nanny, is that it just effortlessly incorporated Jewish culture into the show, and in such a fun way. And this great thing that Fran did in that. And anyway, so we find out that they're opening a new deli, and it's going to be the two of them, because we had gotten hints that that they were having problems at Gilbert's, with that the building was getting kind of old, and so it kind of made sense for them as well that they would do this collaboration instead, and so open a new deli, and then the matchmaker says, "I've still got it."
Yep, I love it.
It's so good,
so great.
I just love this movie. I think it is so good. So I, like we said at the beginning, I give this a 5 out of 5. It was great.
5 out of 5.
Like, it was so good.
Even with that third act breakup issue, I still loved it enough to say.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it's, there are certain things that you cannot discount. Can't. Yeah. You can't. And this is definitely like a sign, like Hanukkah is here to stay. This was beautiful. Like, I love her movies anyway, but this one,
they had such great chemistry. The banter was so good. I loved the whole letter writing sort of motif involved. I loved the families. I thought that was great. They're just everything. It was just a really great movie. And this would be definitely one that I feel like I could recommend to people who had never seen a Hallmark movie or didn't think they liked them. My friend Matt was just saying that he watched the Holiday Sitter, which was great, and this, and I was like,
once I get my butt off deadline, I am totally watching that because
so good. So good. So there we go. We talked about it. Let us know what you think about this movie. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section or on Twitter. And we're so excited about your new books, Stacey. So keep us posted, updated on all of that. And if people want to find you on social media or your books, where can they do that?
I am at Stacey on Twitter, S Agdern on Instagram, TikTok, though I do not actually post anything on TikTok. I just comment on things. And Stacey A. Agdern on Facebook. The website is staceyagdern.com, and my books are available wherever books are sold.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And we can't find us on Facebook, but we are on TikTok, and we've been having a lot of fun actually on there. So check that out. And we're on all the other social medias at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. It really helps us a lot. People to find us. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which is a lot of fun and a great way to support the pod. And you get watch-alongs and other fun things like we've done with Julie a couple times. So check that out. And then we also have the merch store, which has tons of fun festive designs and everything for the postable, Hallmarky, and hearty in your life. So check that out. And thanks so much, Stacey. It's always fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll look forward to I don't know how they top this, but we'll look forward to next year.
I cannot wait to see what happens.
It's going to be fun.
I would love to see Passover next.
Yes.
That would be fun.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.